Okay, committee, thank you and welcome. Welcome to members of the public. Welcome to committee for joining us today's General Finance Committee meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. Confirm that all members are present. We have some in the room today and some online, so we continue with our hybrid format, and we do have quorum. I'd like to also confirm that we have our CAO, clerk, and other members of senior management with us today. And we did not receive any comments at TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca today. Just a reminder that today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. I do want to acknowledge that we did receive a supplementary agenda, and it is to include details about a very important community event we have coming up this weekend. It is the Windermere Terry Fox Run on September 17th. Registration is at 8 a.m. The run starts at 9 a.m. at the Windermere Community Center. So I know that we will talk about community events later, but I did want to read that given it was on our supplementary agenda. Okay, and Bala. So we will talk about community events further, but there is one in Bala as well. So when we get to community events, please expand on the details on that one as well, please. At this point, committee, can I just ask if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. I have an interest that I think disqualifies me from participation in item 6A and 7A.
Okay.
The Parks and Arenas feasibility study. Specific issue is that I own an adjoining piece of real estate to the Port Carling, one of the arenas.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any other? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Just a reminder that motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite today's meeting. And members for voting, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk, and this is not considered a recorded vote. Excellent. So at this point, we have a couple of delegations this morning, and I would like to welcome to today's meeting Liz Lundell, the board chair of the Muskoka Lakes Museum. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Mazan and General Finance Committee members and staff. Could I have the first slide, please, Krisha? My name is Liz Lundell, and I'm speaking today as chair of the Muskoka Lakes Museum, 100 Joseph Street, Box 432, Port Carling, Ontario, P0B1J0. And I'm here to express the museum's sincere thanks for your grant and support in 2023. It was a grant of $40,000, which we received from the township, and I'm here to share a very brief but good news report about the museum's 23 season to date. We'll stay on this slide for a few moments. The museum was founded in 1964 by volunteers and with community support. We're an independent, not-for-profit corporation overseen by a board of volunteer directors. We care for the collection and offer educational programming and are a registered charity focused on the history of the Muskoka area. We lease the land from the district, but the museum owns and maintains the 5,300 square foot facility and maintains over 4,500 artifacts donated by members of our community, some of which are 10,000 years old. We welcome visitors, offer programs, hold special events, and have an online presence. We also provide tourism information to anyone who comes through the doors, whether they stay to tour the facility or not. Next slide, please. These are examples of some of our major operating expenses, and these are the sorts of expenses to which the township grant was applied. I would like to point out that all wages are funded through federal and provincial grants and our own fundraising efforts and charitable receipts that we take in. Next slide, please. So our open season for the facility runs from May 24th until Thanksgiving. As of August 26th, we had over 1,400 people 72% being tourists from elsewhere in the province or even outside of Canada, and 28% were Muskoka and seasonal residents. The number of tourists will likely increase through the fall as the colors come on, and we have a number of guided tours and larger groups attending. 113 museum members donated over $35,000 to the operating budget as of August 22nd. We've also been grateful for a number of corporate donations, including a very generous donation from Clark Muskoka Construction, which assisted with our renovation this past winter to enhance our resort life gallery and improve accessibility and visitor flow through the building. Next slide. We employed 3 summer students this year using federal grants. And of course, students worked on all sorts of things that may be applicable to their future careers, curatorial work, programming, administration. 17 volunteers helped out for more than 400 hours this year, and that's still rising, with gardening, general museum help, reinstalling exhibits, fundraising, and board work. Next, please. We ran several programs again this year after having to take a hiatus for COVID for a number of years. The After Hours lecture series was very popular. We had local historians and other noted people from the community, including Mayor Peter Kelly and Susan Daglish, our local historian. We had programming on the weekends for children that included crafts, games, scavenger hunts, and other types of activities. And then we were able to reinstall our fur trade game back for the first time since the pandemic shut down many of the activities. Next, please. We also took part in the Walker's Point Community Library Pioneer Days. There were approximately 100 children in attendance, and we did a butter churning demonstration. The summer open house in June kicked off the season with members and volunteers. And then we held the Picnic in the Past fundraiser in August, and that raised over $6,400 for the museum. Next. We've installed a number of new exhibits, and we've received several artifact donations as well in 23. The Resort Room Gallery was completely redesigned and expanded. There's a new early toys exhibit installed, and donations that we received this year included a guest register from Pinelands Resort that goes back to the early 1900s. We have, after 2 years of a very popular sailing exhibit, we're going to be changing our temporary exhibit in the Caddo Gallery over the winter. We are looking at exciting ways to engage the community in that program, so please stay tuned, watch for that. Also this winter, we will be revising our Indigenous gallery interpretation. That's very important to us, and we haven't taken great steps on that through the COVID period. Next. So even when the museum is closed for the winter, we do offer programming. We have online exhibits, and we look forward to our curator, Sarah Sharp, participating in community events during the winter as well. For example, the museum is delighted to participate in the Lions Winterfest with our Snow Snakes competition. So even when closed, we continue to provide care and safekeeping for our community's artifacts. And last slide. Thank you for your continued support. We've submitted a grant request for 2024, which includes our 22 financial statements and review engagement from BDO, as well as an operating statement to July 31st. I'd like to close by saying that township funding is critical to our operation, and we're extremely grateful for that support. Thank you for your time today. I'd be happy to answer any questions committee might have.
Thank you very much. That was like 5 minutes and 5 seconds. So very well completed. Thank you very much. Committee, at this point, if there's any questions. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, thank you, Liz, for everything, of course. I'm just wondering, the give, if you will, from the township last year and budget was, I believe, up to $40,000, which is the township contribution. I don't know, I'm presuming it's at least that this year. I don't know.
That is the request for 24.
So I'm just wondering, as we have done with the chamber, we've done this last term of council as well. Should we ponder here as a group having a member, a counselor member on the board of the museum, as we obviously are quite participative financially. I'm wondering if there's interest in that as well. Just a thought. Thank you.
Okay, I think that that's an interesting conversation. I'm just not sure if it's an interesting comment, and I just want to, okay, Councillor Nishikawa has some comments.
Sorry, thank you. Chautauqua, like there's a lot that we would be suggesting that we would have a council member be on. But they wouldn't have voting rights and things like that. They would only be reporting back what, and we get reports in this particular case from the museum. I think a couple times a year you've been by. So in the past, it has never occurred that way. And I know that when we do have, like, for instance, a board member, or excuse me, a counselor on, they have to declare a conflict. Most feel that they have to declare a conflict. So I don't suggest that that's a good idea. Because otherwise, as I said, we've got, look at all the people we give money to, right?
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Burry.
Thank you, and to you. I do sit on the board of the museum, and I refrain from voting on that here. So I take my fiduciary duty to the museum first, and my council second. So I declare a pecuniary interest to the museum and withhold my vote. So we actually do have a councillor on the board that has a vote at the board of the museum and not here, which is good governance.
Okay, Councillor Bosenworth.
I'd like to congratulate the museum on having maintaining this absolute gem in our community. I took my grandsons there this summer and they just had a ball, and they're only 5 and 7. So even for little kids, it's really entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. I could make one comment on the council member on the committee. We are a registered not-for-profit corporation, and we follow the Ontario not-for-profit guidelines and rules. And at one time, back when the ownership of the facility was somewhat under debate because we didn't have a long-term lease with the district yet, we had a 100-year lease with the province, in fact. Councillor Adele Fairfield used to sit on our board and was sort of an advisor in an advisory capacity, but it was decided at that time that it was not good governance to have a member of council sitting on the not-for-profit corporation board. So as you say, we do provide whatever reporting we're requested to report.
Thank you very much for that history, actually. We appreciate
That's what we do.
You did that very well. Thank you. Committee, are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Thank you for the great work. We do hear a lot of great things from members of the community, as well as, from, just to pop in or walk by. There is a real sense of pride, I would say, in our little museum. So we look forward to hearing your next steps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, our next delegation is a Mr. Ross-Freeman. Okay, so he's online. Excellent. Okay, Mr. Ross-Freeman, if you are there, if you could kindly put your camera on and unmute, please.
Sorry about
There
that.
you are.
I was
Yeah,
just,
welcome.
hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome. So we have you up now. Just there are 5 minutes for you to explain what you're looking for. And after you have completed your presentation, I will open up the floor to committee to ask questions. And then we will be discussing any possible outcomes further along in the agenda under new business. So I continue to guide through that, but just because you're new into this forum, I just wanted to explain the process. So with that said, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is David Ross-Freeman. I live at unit number 6, 1213 Camp Jackson Road, near Barla. So thank you for having me. I just want to request, the request today is for the township to take ownership of the snow plowing of Camp Jackson Road. And I'm just going to run through my presentation and hopefully you guys can review that and see the positive sides of this. Okay, so I'm going to go to just quickly through the location. I've got an overview, talk about the power lines, the benefits to the township, costs, and my recommendation. So the location, if you're unsure, on the next slide, sorry, it's south of Port Carling. You guys are in Port Carling. You probably know where Barla is. And if you go down 169, you'll come to Moon River Road. And the length of Camp Jackson Road is 3.6 kilometers from Moon River to Watal Mohawk Territory. And roughly halfway along are the power lines that feed the whole region, right? And that's 2 kilometers to the power lines from Moon River. So that's the location that we're talking about. On the next slide, my overview. Currently, there's more than 31 residents along the Camp Jackson Road, but 31 of those residents voluntarily contribute to the cost of snow plowing Camp Jackson Road. And obviously, if those volunteers didn't contribute and there was less and less, the concern is it would be too expensive for the few, right? And while most of these residents are seasonal, should the Muskoka Township commit to plow, I know more residents would consider living here more permanently. And with COVID, we do have an uptick in more permanent residents. And more permanent residents provide a significant financial boost to the local economy, which I think should not, it should be considered by the township as positive. And the key reason as well, I mean, we just had another outage last week that lasted over 24 hours for myself, to be honest. But, you know, plowed roads, if we didn't plow the roads and we had a freezing rain event in March and Hydro One needs to get to the lines, it could take days just to clear the roads, right? By having it cleared regularly, it benefits everybody, not just the people down that road. So if we can go to the next slide, the power lines, right? If you look at this picture, you're at Moon River Road and Camp Jackson Road, and you can see the power lines on Google Maps there. And these are power lines that, as I say, feed everybody. So you can carry on beyond that. So, you know, ideally it would be great to plow the whole road. But I'm saying even if that's not possible, consider plowing Camp Jackson Road up to the power lines, right? And you can see the Moon River Dam there as well. So just so you guys have a better perspective of where this is. Okay, benefits for the township. If we can just jump to the next slide. So again, I talked about fast access to the power lines by Hydro One. Now, I've become a permanent resident. I can work from anywhere, so can my wife. So love the new community. And when you move, like you can turn a cottage, especially with my wife, you know, she's not happy with it being a cottage. You could upgrade it to be slightly nicer. You probably are all married, and for you ladies out there, you obviously may not want to rough it like some of us. So I'm spending a lot more money in the region just on living, right? I've spent like $1,200 just at Wisemella and Barla. Sift Electrical, I'm spending $25,000 doing an HVAC. Had to get rid of some trees so that my Starlink can work better, right? There was $2,500 budget propane, Ted Smith's construction, right? I'm going to have to put a new well in because lake water is not good enough. There's $30,000, right? And other upgrades the wife wants. So this is money I'm going to be throwing just into the economy. Imagine just local economy. Imagine if we make this road accessible. More people want to live here permanently when they retire, etc. Right, and they can. By knowing that the council, Muskoka Townships, is going to, say, okay, this seasonal road, maybe it's worth spending the money, not making it seasonal, and this kind of money could be introduced into the economy by a lot
Mr.
more
Freeman,
people.
you're at your 5 minutes. Just if you can kind of wind
Okay.
up.
Okay, I'm going to wind up. Yeah. So tangible costs for the township, I can't speak to that because I don't know if you get money from Hydro One, from the federal government, from the provincial government. I don't know how you pay for snow plowing per kilometer per event. So obviously that's something for you guys to review, but hopefully at least 2 kilometers is not a big uptick in the cost for the city, right? And non-tangible costs, if those power lines are out for extended time, does it impact internet, cell tower, 911 calls? I don't know, right? But this is it would impact a lot more than just this road, right? And so my recommendation is for you guys to please review the 3.6 kilometers of plowing Camp Jackson Road, or at a minimum the 2 kilometers to the power lines.
Okay, thank
for
you.
listening.
Okay, thank you. And so as I explained, what we will do now is I will open up the floor to committee members to see if they have any questions for you and or staff. And then we will be having a conversation or a discussion on this particular item later in today's agenda. And at that point, whatever comes out of that discussion, our clerk will follow up with you directly, just so you don't feel like you need to stay for today's meeting for further discussion. So at this point, committee, are there any questions? Councillor Kent.
This is probably for Ken, so through you. What obligation does the township have to provide plowed roads for hydro? And maybe something I should know the answer to.
Okay, thank you. Director Becky?
Not an easy question to answer, Madam Chair. The township has an obligation to maintain public roads in accordance with the standards established by the province under the Highway Traffic Act. The road in question, the status of the road is frankly the fundamental issue in this matter. And I would suggest to you that that's not a clear-cut question or answer. And you would likely be well advised to seek legal counsel on that in order to come up with a complete answer.
Okay.
I'm seeing the councillor's quizzical look, and the fact of the matter is I cannot give you a direct answer to your question. And I think it would, as I say, I think it would be advisable that there be legal advice before you move forward on the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. Through you to Sally, I will say in my experience, and I've had to work with hydro a lot for many years over the winter, and these power outages, in some cases we've, had our power out for 4 days, but they access through lots of different terrain vehicles.
Thank you.
They have lots of means, lots of ability. They're not new to this, especially in the north, so I would suggest that they're not dependent on our roads, solely on our roads at all. They have lots of other equipment that I've witnessed anyhow.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, committee, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Freeman, thank you for coming today. And as I noted, our clerk will follow up with you after today's meeting and let you know what comes out of any kind of discussion. Okay, thank you. Okay. I wasn't sure what was happening there. Thank you. At this point, we have an invited presentation. Item 6A, Ms. Lennox from Lennox Architects to walk us through our phase 1 of arena feasibility study. And are you introducing Mr. Moore?
And decorate.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Moore.
Is this on? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. As committee is aware, in the late spring, we awarded Lennox Architects the contract to produce an arena feasibility study for us. We began the study in July, and committee will recall in the terms of reference, throughout the study, there are three check-in points, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And today I am honored to welcome Susan Lennox from Lennox Architects to give us the phase 1 update.
Thank you. And welcome, Ms. Lennox.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Council. Is the presentation live for everyone?
It is in just, yes, there it is now. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And we would like to thank Council for awarding Lennox Architects this exciting study. Personally, I've been a member of the Muskoka community most of my life, so it's really exciting to be part of the team who's carving out the future plan for the township's indoor recreational facilities. Can I move to the next slide, or do you have to do that? There we go. Great. So just to remind everybody, Corey mentioned briefly the phases for the study, but I'll just walk everyone through. I'll try and be brief in terms of describing the phases and where we are today with the project. So there are 3 milestones. Phase 1 is the site and building analysis review. And for the scope of work, our extended team will be reviewing all the existing documents that were provided by the township. We'll be visiting both the Bala and the Port Carling Arena to inspect it and determine the building condition currently. Phase 2 will be the consultation with the community to determine their collective needs. And then phase 3 is the final reporting phase, in which we take all the findings that we found in phase 1 and phase 2. And in consultation with the town, we develop programming, site fit alternatives, and costing to determine the best path forward to satisfy the community needs for today and the foreseeable future. Next slide. So currently we are complete phase 1 building site analysis. My extended team, consisting of architectural, civil, structural, mechanical, refrigeration, and electrical, have visited both the Port Carling and Bala Arena. We have looked at all the existing documents provided to us, and we have compiled a comprehensive building condition analysis chart. It's quite an extensive document, just a sampling of it, of the 1 page is on the bottom of the slide here. So the way we've summarized our findings is we've identified every room or area within each facility. We've looked at, we've documented what sourced previous documents we've used to generate where we are today with the conditions. And then the green hatched areas are actual assessment. So we looked at OBC compliance, AODA compliant, and the concurrent conditions of every item. The report concludes with the right-hand column, the far right-hand column on the chart, which identifies and categorizes the priority of the deficiencies we discovered. So those categories range from a high priority, which means that the repairs should be done as soon as possible, a medium priority, which means the repairs to be done in the next few years, and a low priority, which means that the item is pretty much at the end of its life expectancy. However, it could be extended if necessary. And then the final phase is the non-applicable, which just means that the item reviewed is in good working condition and doesn't need any other work at this time. Next slide. So the next few slides, we thought we'd just give you a little bit of a sampling of some of the deficiencies discovered during our review. For the Bala Arena, architecturally, it's predominantly the finishes of meet the end of their life expectancy and require some work. And as well, there's some accessibility upgrades that are deficient. Structurally, the ring slab is at the end of its life as the original ring slab, as well as the structure, roof structure needs to has some deficiencies to meet current building code. Next slide. Civil, there are some significant drainage issues around the perimeter of the building. Mechanically, the plumbing fixtures have reached the end of their life expectancy. There are some ventilation items that deficiencies that were discovered, as well as some fans and brine heater that are deficient in the building. Electrically, it's predominantly the emergency systems that have a few deficiencies that should be looked at. Next slide. Port Carling is fairly similar to Bala in the sense it's the same vintage facility. However, there were some major renovations done in 2002, which means some things are in a little bit better condition, but generally architecturally, a lot of the finishes are still at the end of their life expectancy, as well as there's some accessibility upgrades that should be done. Structurally, it's pretty much the same as Bala in the sense that the rink slab is at the end of its life, and some of the structure needs to be looked at to meet current OBC requirements. Next slide. Civil, again, there's drainage issues around the building. Mechanically, there's not as many issues because there has been a lot of upgrades done over time. There are a few items that still are deficient, and electrically the same sort of emergency system upgrades needed. So all of these, this is just a sampling, but all these deficiencies are identified on our comprehensive chart. And that chart will become part of the decision-making, one of the decision-making tools used as we move forward to find the path forward for the final report. Okay, next slide. So the next phase, the community needs review, is the phase we are currently in. We have prepared an online survey, which I believe the township will be launching shortly to the public. We are also in the process of setting up user group meetings in person. The focus of all the consultation will be to try and get the community to see what could be instead of what we currently have. And that will allow us to set with the township to set priorities moving forward to the programming and final reporting stage. Next slide. So just to summarize where we're at in the process, as I mentioned, we are finished the phase 1 work that September 2023. We are in process with the community needs assessment, and we anticipate that wrapping up in November. And then the final reporting, which would include the preferred option and costing, will be complete in the new year. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Lennox. Okay, committee, do you have any questions? Knowing that staff is going to do a report next as well, but if we do have questions for Ms. Lennox. Councillor Savit.
Thank you. And through you, I'm wondering about the user group meetings. I wondered from your perspective as a consultant, what your proposal is for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the user group meetings themselves?
Yes, I think that was the question.
Right.
How are you planning to conduct those?
We are going to do them as in-person sessions. We'd like to do them as smaller groups. So it usually allows people to be able to speak more freely. We would expect that they would complete the survey that everyone else has completed, but then we would have conversations with them about their needs as a group.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any other questions? Okay, I'm seeing none. Thank you very much. I know that Mr. Moore, I believe you're doing a report next, are you? On this particular item. So maybe Ms. Lennox, just in case another question comes up after you walk us through that.
Sure, yeah, the report was just kind of an information only report just to introduce Ms. Lennox. So if there are any questions of staff, we'd be happy to answer those as well.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any questions for either Mr. Moore or Ms. Lennox? I'm seeing none. Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing, helping guide us and our community through what could be, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
Have a great day. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. And I believe you are next, item 7B. And I believe, do we want to let the mayor know? I believe he can come back in at this point, correct? Thank you very much. Okay, so 7B, maybe just give one moment or.
Yeah, no problem.
We're just waiting because somebody had left the building for a minute, so. Thank you. Yes.
Is Lennox gonna do a comparison of sites? Okay. So
Correct.
I didn't see that in there where they said, we see the deficiencies here, but, and I wasn't here for the history, but I assume we're only gonna have one.
Correct. Lennox will look at both existing sites and provide an analysis on each
Okay.
as part of the final report.
Thank you. Welcome back, Mayor Kelly. We are now moving on to item 7B. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair. This report is regarding an implementation strategy for the Parks and Rec Master Plan. As committee is aware, this year, 2023 is the first year for implementation and has been dedicated to resourcing the plan. Council's done a great job in hiring a new staff person as manager for that role, and and as well we've undertaken the arena feasibility study as well. One of the top tasks for the new position working with Director Becking was to provide an implementation strategy for the Parks and Rec Master Plan. And we've certainly dedicated the first couple months to looking at existing facilities, reviewing the plan itself, and drafting how we think we can implement it over the short and long term. With that, you'll find in Appendix 1 a copy of the draft implementation strategy. The focus obviously being on the priority setting, high, medium, and low priority of the 111 recommendations within it. We've identified those priorities attached to each recommendation. You'll also notice we've included a status update column as well to that strategy, with the intention for us to update council annually on the progress of that plan and help keep us on track. As it speaks to year 2 and 2024 in particular, the Parks and Rec Master Plan identified undertaking due diligence, and we plan to do just that. I would kind of frame year 2 as really that foundation building, kind of getting our ducks in order, everything in place so that we can begin to roll things out in a timely manner. With that, we obviously, Table 2 within the report identifies those initiatives for 2024. 2 of the bigger ones obviously being we're going to continue on with and adopt a progressive plan for the arenas. That's going to carry on well past the completion of the arena feasibility study. So that is certainly kind of the top priority. We've also identified the development of a Parks and Trails Standards Manual. And those familiar with the process for the Community Improvement Plan, I look at it very similar to that, kind of a community improvement plan for our parks and trails specifically. So through that, we can develop a classification system, design standards, etc. With that, we'd like to move into some other areas, working with our community center hall boards on improvements, communication, enhancement from a township's perspective on programs, etc. And as we all know, there's lots of updates to undertake with our policies and bylaws. So we're certainly going to want to get those underway as well. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much for the great hire. Thank you for that shout out to the rest of us. Committee, are there any questions? Councillor Zabit.
Thank you, through you. Yeah, I love the shameless self-promotion. Congratulations.
The rebound from kicking the coffee mug.
A great recovery, excellent recovery. I'm wanting to draw attention to the 111 proposals, of course, or recommendations, I suppose, even more to the point. Items 36, 37, and 38, which relate specifically to boat launches, docks, and the role of private marinas. We've just come off a few years of much discussion about parking, boat parking, vehicle parking in and around accesses to water by those same people. And I'm just wondering, all of us are going to have probably our pet pieces of this 111, suggestion bag of tricks here. How do I help this committee get these 3 to a higher level of concern and attention paid? It's in the middle of a mix, and I think these are vitally important, and I'm hearing it from many. So I'm
So is
wondering,
the question, would it be possibly?
how will they be prioritized, I suppose?
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Moore? or-
Sure. Looking at those three initiatives, staff definitely identify them as short-term priorities, meaning they are high priority, so short-term initiative. So with that, within the first 3 years of the implementation of the plan, we're currently going to be moving into year 2. I think identified in the report, we speak to a lot of our current strategies, plans coming together with a focus in 2024 of kind of that capital service level review. And I think a lot of those items you've identified there will kind of play a part in that review too, and help shape that path forward, along with results of the TMP, et cetera. That's how I kind of envision that going
Okay,
forward.
thank you. And I think Director Becking might want to add a comment.
I was going to share on a similar vein, Madam Chair. As you're all aware, we've devoted a lot of energy over the last 2-3 years to sort of understanding our book of business, if you will. And those are starting to come together through the various master plans and other analyses that have been done. 2024 is going to be the point at which all of this comes together. And council, committee and council are going to have to wrestle with the issue of level of service and what that means for the township, not only today, but into the future. So I think my response to the councillor would be that's a work in progress. It's coming. We clearly identify it both not only in the Parks and Rec master plan, but also in the transportation master plan, which, well, there's a crossover. It's neither fish nor fowl, quite frankly. That it is a high priority. It's an issue that has to be addressed, and it will be starting early in 2024.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burry.
I hope, thank you, and through you, I hope this is not too obvious, but I do hope that we will continue to look at everything that we, in a total lifetime cost of ownership and service delivery, so that if we're replacing furnaces, we're going to use new technology, and if we're going to fix buildings, we're going to make sure that they're insulated properly. If we're, so that we do everything with a total cost of ownership view, as opposed to band-aids and binder twine.
Okay, so I think I see Director Becking has his hand up, Mr. Moore, so I'll let him take the lead.
I couldn't have said it better myself, quite frankly. And that's the essence of asset management, is you got to stop thinking in terms of today and start thinking in terms of the life cycle of everything that we are responsible for. And I look forward to having those discussions with all of you in the weeks and months to come.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Billsworth.
As we implement this plan, I think it will be important to engage the community, and I was wondering what your plans are for that. And I know there are some community organizations out there. Specifically, I know past Councillor Bridgman and Laurie Campbell have an organization they're working as, and they've asked me to say, how we're here, we want to help, we want to know how we can help. So that's my question, is how can those organizations help in developing the implementation plan?
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair, certainly. As we work towards completing the recommendations, there'll be certainly more opportunities for public engagement. It may differ based on that project or that activity or initiative. In particular, for 2024, we plan to develop that Parks and Trails Standards Manual, and through that, we hope to create a working group to help assist us in developing that, helping to classify our parks and kind of, I guess, that community improvement plan outlook of how we want them to look, the items in them. So we certainly look to engage with the public that way to help form a working group to help guide us in that development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I have a resolution. It's going to move on. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that committee adopt the implementation strategy for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan attached to report number PW-2023-53, and that the proposed 2024 Parks and Recreation initiatives and related costs outlined in report number PW-2023-53 be included in the draft 2024 Public Works budget submission for council's consideration. Okay, are there any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Good luck.
Thank you.
As somebody who is quite heavily involved in this initiative, it's very exciting for our community, and I think one that I can see you're really pouring your heart and soul into already. And just coming out of yesterday's meeting, there's members of the community who are already seeing your presence and appreciating it. So have fun. Have fun with this. Well, it's a lot of work, but have fun. Oh, you are still here, 7C.
That's right. Just a short report, Chair, a quick summary of the swimming program this past year. Hannah, our swimming lead, did a fantastic job. The report just provides a little bit of overview of the results this year. Numbers down a little, but overall pretty consistent in years past. I will note one of the things we want to look at as we look towards next year, once we get a new swimming lead in place, is the potential for some maybe nighttime swimming lessons, just to provide a difference in timing for those maybe unable to participate during the day. It just might provide some opportunities there. So I look forward to having those discussions with our new swimming lead when we get them in place, and I will keep committee updated next year.
Thank you. Councillor Ken.
Have you done an analysis of what the break even would be to get this to a net zero to the cost? How many swimmers would we need? How many lessons to cover the $16,000 deficit? Because I just wonder, we made a decision, obviously, as a council at some point that they wanted to offer a program that was substantially in deficit. I understand the value, but it is expensive. And we could be having pickleball lessons as well. I mean, we've made a decision to do swimming lessons, and I'm wondering what the break even is.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Through
Moore.
you, Chair, off the top of my head, I don't have the break even numbers. I could, if Director Donaldson's available, if he has the ability to maybe crunch some numbers quickly for us and maybe kind of report back, but off the top of my head, sorry, no, I don't.
Okay. Councillor.
I mean, I can't tell, but it looks to me like it would at least have to be a double, if not more, because your expenses would go up more than a double of the number of swimmers to get you to a break even. So I just wonder if this is something we need to think about. I'm sure it's beloved by the community, but there are opportunity costs here where we could take the same dollars and offer another community program that might be equally as popular. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Becking.
Sure. The councillor is asking the same question I asked myself when I came here in 2019. You're not far off the mark. At the time, I think it was almost exactly 1.9 something. Committee and council has considered the matter at that time. The value in terms of educating the children and the service that it provides in terms of avoiding potential catastrophic events far outweighed. I'm paraphrasing the discussion that took place at the time, far outweighed the financial element of the issue, and that was the basis on which the decision was made. Certainly, if committee and council wishes to revisit the matter, we can happily do that. But that was the essence of the discussion at the time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent. So
Just one idea, I've been involved at Muskoka Lakes Golf and Country Club in trying to get numbers up. And I think that with this community and kids taking swimming lessons, the more you can offer that parent who wants to get rid of their kid for a couple hours might actually increase the membership substantially if you had more of a play care with all these nice Hannah Park play facilities and the kids are between 3 and 6 years old or 3 and 10 years old or whatever they are. If you could make it a 45-minute lesson made into a 2-hour block or something where there were games and other activities, it's possible. And I'm just spinning off here to increase the membership by making it more popular by expanding the amount of time that parents can dump their daughter or child. And I mean, you may agree with me on that one as a parent. So,
well, dumping the child, that's one way to look at that. Yes. Yes. Well, it is just if I could pick up and provide a bit of background and context, this was very much discussed in our Parks and Recreation Master Plan strategy, because when we did hear from the public, the demographics have shifted slightly. And I think that is a value proposition that might be different to be considered. And I would imagine, and maybe I need to look to that, that perhaps Mr. Moore could be exploring that in your discussions with the new swim lead, is how do you increase the numbers and just have a look at this a little bit more closely. So I see at this point, I see your hands over here, but Councillor Edwards has his hand up first. Councillor Edwards, a question?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, before night and not swimming lessons, I'd like to see them reinstated in Windermere. They were canceled there for cost savings, supposedly. There are people here that just will not drive over to Hannah's Park. And that's maybe a 20-25-minute drive, depending where they are. It was always attended. And we're in the service industry. We're not trying to make a profit on this. If we can save one life by somebody learning how to swim, it's worth it. So I'm not worried about trying to break even or anything else like that. It's offering services to people that don't have services at this time. And I would support bringing it back to Windermere. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Mayor Kelly and Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. And through you, just to change the tone a little bit, it seems to me there were fewer beach closures this year. But I don't know. I'm curious to know if you know, because I think the sense that they're going to close the beach for E. coli or whatever reason might keep people from getting engaged. And again, my sense is that didn't happen as often this year as it has in the 2 or 3 years prior.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Yes, through you, Chair. I don't have any hard numbers as to kind of the stats around that, but my sense is similar to yours. I think there was fewer this year. Last year seemed to be quite a few, if I can recall. It seemed like every week we were diverting to one other beach. But yeah, my sense is similar to yours for this year.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Just through you, to you, I will say, my son attended, I think, for 3 years or more, but also I've been incredibly involved in our community. And while I appreciate Sally, what her suggestion is and that type of thing, I would also say that, and Corey's going to find this, and I think actually Corey knows this, it's very, very difficult to do programming in Muskoka Lakes, especially in the summer months. And, we tried to run soccer, for instance, when school ends, kids disperse, essentially. And so you still get that same number. We've had that same number for years and years. And I would suggest we could and should look at Windermere, because it was a popular location in the past. If things are changing, and I do recognize that the community is changing slightly, But again, very difficult to do that type of programming. I would say that many people that when I was involved in the swim program, we were switching off with other parents, you know, for the pickups and what you did and that type of thing. But also there's really not room to do add-ons to the swim program. It's interesting because you're trying to manage kids amongst the public use of the beaches as well. So it's just a very different, I will say that district did a couple of days of programming pre-COVID. And that would be an interesting thing to see if we could get that back. But that's another added value, but it wouldn't be added on to the swim program, but they actually did bring some events to Jasmine Park, for instance. But I would just say programming in our township is very, very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Just to follow up on Councilor Nishikawa, was there a decision made like sometime in the last 5 years or 10 years that we were going to run programs at a loss? Because this is more important that people learn to swim. I don't know why we think
From
this is
my
a bit harsh. Why does the municipality feel it's their responsibility to teach kids how to swim?
Well, so we are a community of lakes. We are a community of lakes and we don't offer very many services to our taxpayers from a community service perspective. So this is a community service. Again, to suggest that, well, we want you to live here and we want your taxes, but we don't want to offer any services to your children and that type of thing to live here is not the same as every other municipality. So it's you know, quite, and it is a difficult thing to have to get into your car and drive for more than in some cases, like in my case, if I had to take my kid to swimming lessons, it would be 45-minute drive. So those type out of the community. So I'm not going to spend any money in my own community either, right? But I will say though, that this discussion about swim classes has been going on since I was a counselor in 2000.
Right.
We have been running the same numbers and the same loss, more or less.
So just to kind of bring this back to and what's different today is we actually have a resource internally who's going to help guide us on that. And so I think the appropriate thing is I think our manager of recreation is taking in the comments from today, and perhaps the appropriate thing is to come back. You know, you'll have opportunities, spend more time with the community, more time with us, and just come back with thoughts and recommendations at a future time. Is that fair?
Through you, Chair, certainly. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, committee. Councillor
Chair.
Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I'll just remind everyone of the presentation that Mr. Moore had just given us about his 2024 plans. And we do have a recipe for all these for recreation events. And I think we've got to work the plan. So rather than, my suggestion is rather than asking staff to do too much work in this area, I'd rather have them work the plan that we just approved. And we decide during budget time what we're going to do, but eventually we will get around to these programming. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, committee, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Appreciate it. And I am going to suggest that we continue on, if that's okay. You would like, okay, we are going to take a quick, I'm going to suggest a 10-minute break. So we will be back at 10:10. Thank you very much. good to go. Item 8A.
Thank you, Chair Mazan, and good morning, committee. The report before you is regarding an application the township has received for the sale of an original road allowance from an abutting landowner. Staff are recommending approval of the application subject to the noted conditions in this staff report. And with that said, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Committee, we've all had a chance to read the report. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, this is a fairly lengthy resolution, so I will read it, and then if there's any discussion. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that original road allowance application ORA-04-23 Avalon Corporation be approved, subject to the following conditions. That the township forward, correspondence to abutting landowners of the original road allowance to be closed. Rule number 422-07. -017, requesting either a confirmation of participation in the transaction or a waiver of interest. Should the township not receive a response by the specified deadline, the failure to respond will be treated as a waiver of interest. 2. Upon the confirmation of waiver of interest from the landowner of rule number 4-22-017, a corresponding draft numbered reference plan of survey shall be prepared and provided to the clerk for review within 1 year of the date of this conditional approval. 3. Let the township be in receipt of the following from the acting solicitor. 1. Confirmation that public notice of the proposed disposition was published pursuant to the township policy C-LS-06. 2. Confirmation from the district municipality of Muskoka that the width of the district road allowance crossing the concession road allowance is preserved to a width of no less than 26 meters, equal either side of the center line of the traveled road and aligning within an extension of Part 3 on Plan 35R-5347 to their satisfaction. 3. Confirmation from other applicable agencies that they have no concerns with the proposed disposition, and that 4. A road closing bylaw, a declaration of surplus resolution, and any related necessary documentation to affect the disposition. Point number 4. Payment of any applicable fees for the land costs, solicitor's time, and disbursements, as well as confirmation applicable property taxes have been paid up to date. That's it. Okay, committee, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Okay, welcome, Director Donaldson, 8B, budget guidelines.
So here we are again. Morning, committee. Before you is a report with a recommendation for a tax levy increase of 6.9% for 2024 over the 2023 approved levy. So following my report to committee on building the budget that was presented in July, our key priority areas for this budget are capital infrastructure and human resource talent. The July report also touched on external factors which are affecting the municipality, namely inflation and interest and property assessment. Appendix 1 to this report speaks to these matters, and as well with the recent actions of the Bank of Canada in the interest rate policy and referencing assumptions used by Ontario's chief economist. The general operating cost assumption for 2024 is 3%, with 2% being used in 2025 and 2026 in the outlook years. For capital, based on the long-term 25-year historical average of the non-residential construction building price index prior to 2020, so before the big spike, that number is approximately 5%. So we're recommending a 5% annual inflationary increase in the 10-year capital plan. Of course, varying assumptions will be used in the budget where appropriate, where these general assumptions are not expected to apply. The 6.9% recommended levy increase, 3.7% of that relates to net operating costs before contributions to reserves.
The 2024 budget will also include the impact of an update to our fees and charges bylaw, which is expected to come forward next month. In 2023, the comparable levy increase to the 3.7 was 5.2%. So it's a reduction of 1.5% from what we did last year. And again, this year is driven by inflation and last year's number was driven by mainly by inflation and the need to reset our spending limits with the higher prices that we were seeing at that time. The remaining 3.2% of the increase is related to contributions to reserves and would bring our total contributions to reserves in 2024 to $4 million from the tax levy. So earlier this year, when we were deliberating the 2023 budget, members of committee asked staff to look at updating the reserve policy and having a policy that would direct annual contributions to reserves. Staff are recommending deferring updating that policy pending receipt of all the outstanding studies that we're looking at. So the non-core asset management plan and the completion of some of the other studies. We saw the arena feasibility this morning, as well as the completion of a service level study to establish what our capital needs are going forward. So by deferring this update, committee will have the best information available and direction will be provided by council to staff to update that policy, which will then work to determine what the future capital reserve requirements are for the township. A detailed life cycle management and financial strategy is required to be approved by council under the Infrastructure and Jobs Prosperity Act and Regulation 588/17. In the meantime, in the absence of perfect information, but recognizing that the status quo contributions are not sustainable to finance what we know today, staff are recommending this increase of $441,000 in 2024 in the contributions to reserves at this time. The report also notes that the recommended levy does not include any new spending. So council has ratified a number of resolutions requesting staff to bring things forward for consideration in the budget, which are included in Appendix 3 of this report. These items will be presented and deliberated through the budget process. Last week, committee heard from members of the public at the meeting on September the 7th, and the public survey is still open on our Engage Muskoka Lakes website until the Thanksgiving weekend. So we'll continue to collect input through that venue as well. These requests, along with any that council may feel or committee may feel is warranted to be considered for the 2024 budget, will be taken back then by staff and evaluated. And then we will bring forward a report at the first budget meeting to seek direction from committee in terms of which items should be included in the final draft of the 2024 budget. So further to committee's direction today, the first budget meeting is expected to take place the week of October 30th. So with that, I will open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but can you just repeat for me one of the things you said, which was, you said the operating expense number was up by 3%, 3.7% of the 6.9, 3.7 percentage points of that was related to operating?
Net operating costs, thanks through you, Chair, net operating costs before contributions to reserves.
And it's up by 3.7%. And that includes the full year for the partial employees from last year?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. So 3.7 is what we think is effectively what we coin as 2023 services at 2024 prices.
So actually that's that if you're including the partial year for the other people, that means you've decreased other areas. I mean, I see insurance is going to go up. I was wondering, you must have something in mind there to keep it as low as 3.7%. Thank you. With inflation at 3%.
Yeah, so you're through, Chair. So, we're working through the numbers, and I think we're also considering as well, when I say net operating costs, as I say, there's going to be an update to the fees and charges bylaw as well. So there may be impacts on the non-operating or the non-tax revenue piece, which can offset some of those costs that we might see. So we might see higher than 3.7 on the expenditure side. If we see an offset on the revenue side, then that gets us to a net number as well. So that's also a possibility in that draft moving forward.
One follow-up.
Yes.
At the September 7th meeting, I thought the most useful thing was the letter from the ratepayers. I particularly thought that they requested a forecast of your capital budget with like 0 increases in there. CPI increases. I would love to see that. And I don't think it's a particularly large request. You just take out the percentage increases in the long-term forecast, so that 99 million problem, which is what's scaring me, is how we attack this $99 million problem, which used to be 50, now is 99, over the next couple of years. I just like to see that request from the ratepayers if we could, as part of the budget package. If you know what I'm talking about, Chair.
Yes.
Zan.
Yes. Director Donaldson.
Thank you, Chair. So the way we forecast is to try to keep things in nominal dollars for the fact that we're looking at what we'll need to raise over that 10-year time. We don't have that inflationary component broken out by year for an item. So what we'll do is, for an item that might be 5 years out, we'll take today's price and we'll just gross it up as a number. So pulling that out could be a bit of a short-term challenge, but I'll certainly look at it and talk to my peers about it and see what we could be able to do. If even just, if not part of the package, at least just speaking to what that number would be approximately without the inflationary piece.
Just make sure you said, so if that truck gets replaced in 5 years and it costs 25,000 today, you've got it in at a 3% increase over 5 years, 5 years from now, compounding. I'm saying that's what I want to see coming out.
Yeah, through you, Chair. And yeah, we've just got the number. We don't have it broken out between what's the base price. And, yeah, so. But we can perhaps provide some information in the report that speaks to the comparator of the real and nominal.
Because it was the same exact request I had last year. I said that assumption bothered me in the long-term forecast, and ratepayers came back with the same comment. So I think it's a reasonable way of looking at it as a baseline. The 99 is very scary. So anyway, it's a different approach.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Committee, I see Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Not so much a question as a comment. So I guess I would reserve that for later, or maybe it's here and now.
I do have a resolution, so perhaps we can have further discussion after. Just let's try to keep it to questions right now, and then I'll read the resolution. And
Well, if I might, though, not that it's contingent on their, well, through you.
yes,
Thank you. So here we are, it's 6.9. A year ago, we sat here and it was a lot higher than that when it came to us initially. And, there was a lot of concern, and we somehow found a way to get it to where it was approved. And isn't that great? I have a very major concern, and it's relating to all of the master plans that we have. These last few years, we've all been waiting for the execution, if you will, that piece of these plans. And there's some 7 plans, if I include the CIP in that, the community improvement plan. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to this is before we even started talking about a la carte, as we have become talking about that over these last few years. I'm wondering if, if I don't have a problem with the 6.9, we should find a separate way somehow to acknowledge all of the plans and find a way to fuel fiscally all of those plans. Because I think what we're going to end up doing is 50 grand here and 30 grand here and 20. And, are we really doing ourselves a service after we've spent $500,000 on plans? I'm concerned that if there was a way to somehow fuel it separately and acknowledge a $500,000 one-time whatever to get all these plans up and on the table and moving, there's that piece. And then again, my concern with the other part, which is the a la carte, by the time we get there, we could be at, 10%. So I'm concerned about that. Thank you.
thank you. And I do see our CAO would like to speak. And then Mayor Kelly. Councilor Kent, do you mind turning your?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if Mr. Donaldson wanted to start and I can follow up, or if he prefers that okay. So thank you for the question, Councillor Zavitz. There's been references made to the need to do a capital service level study next year. And so one of the other pieces that's going to come to the fore this fall is going to be an asset management plan for the non-core infrastructure. So we're going to get a better understanding of the quantum of needs as it relates to our non-core infrastructure in the same way that we did through the asset management plan for our core infrastructure. And you'll recall that as it relates to the core infrastructure, and I'm going to look to both Mr. Becking and Mr. Donaldson to correct me if my numbers are wrong, but I believe at the core infrastructure, we identified that we had something like $24 million in outstanding needs as it relates to roads and bridges, as well as needing to get our funding level up. So that's a quantum we need to address in needs. Then we need to get our funding level up to 6 to 7 million a year going into reserves solely for roads. So the senior team, our vision to have you contemplate what the future looks like is to bring those plans together and have a conversation through what we're calling a capital service level study. So the idea being, what is our service level for the various roads that we have, and what are our priority in the roads piece? And then looking at, okay, what's our next priority? Is it fire? Is it recreation? What is it? What does that look like? So all of those pieces that we've invested in, all of those plans and strategies that we've invested in, they then start to shape that conversation. And that's a conversation that we need to have with the community in terms of what does the future look like, and how much are we willing to spend to fuel that vision. Then once we know the what, and that's what we're calling the what, then we will come forward with a financing plan as to the how. And so that may be through, a combination of financial tools. That remains to be seen, but that's a fairly critical conversation that's going to occur next year. And Mr. Becking mentioned it earlier this morning. And we've started to, you'll see from past reports and in Mr. Donaldson's report today, we've started to put that notion in our reports. And so later this fall, after we receive the asset management plan, Mr. Donaldson and Mr. Becking are going to come back to you with a terms of reference for that capital service study. And our hope is that, once council has endorsed that terms of reference, that will get flipped out right away in the new year after the budget has been passed or approved. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Donaldson, did you have anything to add, or is that?
I do not, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, sorry.
Go ahead.
Through you, I want to just address the issue that Councillor Zavitz raised, because I think he's bang on. But I also think it echoes a lot the very instructive guidance that we got in the form of a communication from the Ratepayers Association, which I think was a week or two ago, Muskoka Ratepayers Association. Perhaps give me a pause to sit back and think. We're talking about all sorts of what I would call sub plans to some bigger vision. And I think to a certain degree, we've lost the thread on the vision. I think it's, we've got transportation master plans, arena feasibility plans, parks and trails master plans, this plan, that plan. I forget where are we going? And I think it's a very fair question. And I think it's critical to approving a budget to sit back and make sure that we're all on the same page, that we all buy into the same vision or set of goals for the township, for this not this council, but for council to be targeting. And I feel particularly remiss that I couldn't pick it up. I know what I think and I know what I feel. And I know I've talked to enough of you to know generally where we're headed, but we owe it to the constituents, we owe it to ourselves, and frankly, we owe it to really good decision-making to make sure we're all doing the same thing for the same reason. And so I think that at some point in time, we need to put a pause, and I'm not talking about stop anything that's underway. Stop adding new things or setting new targets or setting new goals until we can actually go back and reconfirm that somewhere we have a clear, concise strategy that identifies what do we want to be when we grow up? What's this going to look like when we're done? How will we know when we're done? And then we get sort of tumble down from there, identify what needs to get done in what order, what needs to get financed and how we're going to finance it. I don't think you start at the top and work or start at the bottom and work up in building a budget. I think you need to set a vision. You need to get general consensus around that vision, and then you need to break it into the components and do those things in the order that need to happen for the thing to come together the way you planned. So I would agree. I get lost in all the branches and I forget what the tree is going to look like when we're done.
Well, I do appreciate this, and I think I didn't want to interrupt you, but I didn't hear a question. It was more a response, I believe, at this point to Glenn, our Councillor Zavitz. Thank you. I do see now again our CAO would like to comment, and then I'm going to ask us if we can focus our conversation on questions. I will then read the resolution and then we can have the further conversation.
Two things, Madam Chair, and I was remiss in my initial remarks of also indicating that the plan is to revisit our strategic plan next year in terms of confirming, to the mayor's point, the vision. But I also think that that capital service study pulls it all together, right? And will allow you to say, this is where we're going from an infrastructure perspective. So to provide that vision, and then I think all of the details that are in those plans cascade out of your decision about service levels for each of those areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, through you to Mark. I simplify things and quite frankly, I don't have the ability today to narrow this number down, and I'm hoping you could. So in the past, we would say, for instance, 1% of the budget was $100,000. What is 1% today? Is it $24 or roughly $25? I'm just trying to, no, that's, I'm, go ahead. Thank you.
Director Donaldson.
Chair Mazan, every increase in expenditure of $130,000 would be 1% on the levy.
Thank you. And so if I could further, I guess in this, I mean, it's very brief. We don't have the whole budget in front of us and that type of thing. But I am concerned that what I see today is not necessarily addressing, I don't know what we're addressing, honestly. And so I'm not comfortable with the almost 7%. And so working it backwards, how would you suggest I start finding my 1%?
Okay, thank you, Director Donaldson.
Thank you, Chair. So I don't think we're at that stage yet. We haven't provided any detail in terms of what how we'll get to the 6.9 and more specifically the 3.7%, because that's really the piece where there are areas of gray in terms of the decision making. The 3.2 on the contributions to reserves is very black and white. So we haven't gotten to that stage yet. So what I'm suggesting as part of the analysis that we've done is that, as a general rule, CPI is, it's gravitating around 3% currently. Our compensation policy talks about CPI as the annual adjustment for staff. Staff costs make up 50% of operating costs, as we know from the financial statement. So using those kinds of macro metrics is how I'm kind of arriving at that. Senior leadership will kind of dive into the details to present a plan at the end of October that kind of really spells out the details of how we're getting ourselves within this guideline. But really, we're asking at this point for direction from committee that this is an area or a level of tax levy increase that generally is acceptable and that committee is comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. And so just to summarize if I was to look at these different numbers, what I'm hearing, the 3.7, we have our operating budget. That's the areas of gray. This is just a broad directional statement at this point. You will be coming back on October 30th or that week with a more detailed budget for us to be looking at. The secondary part is the contributions to reserve. There's a recommendation based upon your insight. This is your recommendation, is that we should be increasing our contribution to reserves by the 3.2, but that's a lever. That's a bit more black and white. And then the third group of funding or that has an influence potentially on our tax rate, that we're comfortable with would be any new additional items. So things that we might have heard of from the public, ideas, the next item on the agenda that we might hear from committee, and or other items that we've been directing you historically. Is that correct? So there's like these 3 different areas. If we,
Yeah, I think that sums it up fairly well. Yeah, I mean, there are operating costs, there's contributions to reserves for the future, and then that doesn't include the 6.9 doesn't include anything new. So if we want to add anything new, that would be incremental to that.
okay, so just to summarize, and the question really is, are we comfortable with the 6.9 generally speaking? And knowing that the future meeting, we will be getting more into the detail. Okay, thank you. A question, Councillor Kent and Councillor Bozeman, just a question, please.
Yeah,
Through me.
I
Thank
think
you.
what you're trying to avoid is last year we said, oh my God, 8% is too high. They went out, they came back with it. Then we came back and we made them find all these savings. So I guess if we're going to start at 6.9%, we all have to be comfortable with the fact that it's not getting any lower than that. So that's where I'm just struggling here is I understand more than I did last year at this time. But is everybody here in order to avoid that issue last year, which was not good, sending everybody back? That's your question. And
Well, I'm trying to guide us to that, but I'm just specifically right now, do we have a question for Director Donaldson on this report? Once I've read the resolution, we will have more chance to discuss, but that is essentially what we're trying to do here.
because I don't want to have to go back and then say, now please take $400,000 out of the budget after we send them back and look, we embarrass him, we embarrass everybody. It's better to set them off on the right foot. And we're going to have a higher tax increase this year than we had last year, assuming we start them at 6.9%.
Okay, so questions, Councillor Rosemarth.
Through you, Chair. Could you help me understand why we need to wait for some of these studies to be complete before we could have a look at a policy related to setting reserve levels? And my second question is, there was a request from the Muskoka ratepayers that we add headcount person years as reports, get a history of it and a projection of what those would be. I think that would be very useful, given that 50% of our operating expenses are related to people.
Thank you. Director Donaldson.
Great, thank you. Through you, Chair. So I'll answer the second question first. The headcount one, I think is easy. I think we can do that. With respect to the first part, it's just a recommendation on our part that because we haven't set levels of service and we haven't finalized all the outcomes from the various reports we're seeing, the capital needs could change dramatically. They could change not at all. It's difficult to know at this time. The notion of putting, there's two thoughts I have on this. The first one is the notion that things are fluid would generate a number that perhaps would vary wildly as we make more and more of these decisions. So rather than be volatile in terms of what our recommended contribution to reserve is through a policy, through a formula, as our capital needs may change, that was why I thought it might be better if we just wait until we kind of know where we're going to land and what our levels of service are. What is what are the conditions of our roads going to be? Are they going to be minimum maintenance standards? Are they going to be something higher than that? Or are they going to be varying? So it's really around what that needs piece is going to be. And I think that we really just need to be cognizant that the outcome from a policy that dictates based on a metric, and you can use various ways to calculate it, could be quite shocking, right? The number could be quite like jaw-dropping, and I just feel that we need to make sure we've got all of the right information in the right context, in the right formats, and figure out how we're going to smooth that in over time, rather than just having a formula that creates a number and then here's where we are, and then having to react to that and possibly varying off of the policy we just developed that creates that output. So that was kind of two of my thoughts around that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and through you. I do have a very specific question for you, sir. So 2023, the net tax increase number for both the township and the district. Could you share with the public here what we are looking at as a gross amount right now that we're considering, which is 6.9 and for the township and 6.1 proposal for the district? How does that compare to the actual that occurred in 2023 in aggregate, if you would?
So through you, Chair. So I didn't do the calculations on the 2023 number, including the district and the Ministry of Finance for education off the top of my head. So I don't have that direct comparison. I do have in the report what the impact would be for 2024 as a complete number. And I would just also say that the guideline that is in the referenced report from the district is in fact a guideline. So they may come in with an actual different number than that. So.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kent, Councillor Kent. Councillor Kent, just your mic, please. Committee, are there any other questions?
Question, please.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that staff prepare and present a draft 2024 operating and capital budget to the General Finance Committee for a deliberation with a maximum increase in the net operating levy of 6.9% over the approved 2023 budget net levy based on current service levels. At this point, I'd like to open up the floor for any kind of questions or comments. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you through you to whoever will listen. Just saying, I'm not comfortable with the 6.9 going in at this point. I listened to reports today about rent increases. I went through a meeting last week of understanding what the cost of living is in Muskoka, especially concerning housing. And these percentages are not matching up with income levels of people that I would just say the average contractor in the community, because I think that's the majority of our income happens in that way. I mean how people earn their living. And it just very, very much concerns me that in fact, taxpayers are being asked to tighten their budgets. And I think we need to be very aware that we still need to do that. So I don't want to go in at 6.9. Again, much like Sally had raised, we're going to be having lots of add-ons. And I would rather start even at 5% or 6%, and then start adding on. I'm not comfortable with starting at such a high number at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I guess this is my 5th time or go around on the budgets. And I've been uncomfortable with us giving a number to staff and go back and hit that number. I like the idea that this year is that give us a number in your professional opinion on what you think we should be doing. And then if it's 6.9, if it's 8.7, whatever. And then they work at that. And we bring in all the equations and all the components and we could drop down that number or we could raise that number. But I really want to hear the best or worst case scenario that staff have and don't give them a number.
Okay, thank you. I think our CAO would like to chime in.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I think, to be honest, that's the number you have in front of you. That's the recommendation. Mr. Donaldson has been very thoughtful in terms of assembling his report and suggesting the numbers to you. He's been very prudent, in fact. Arguably, in the absence of a budget policy, as he mentioned earlier, with respect to contributions to reserves, if you pulled a number out of the hat and said 25%, that number would end up shocking in terms of the amount, the quantum that would have to go into reserves. So he's come in at a 3.2. He could have come in at a 5% as it relates to reserves, because arguably, and he's shown it in his reports previously, if you have $10 to $11 million going out in capital expenses a year and you're only putting in arguably 3 to 4, at some point, the math is going to weigh out that you're going to be behind the 8 ball. And so that's, I think Mr. Becking has referred to it. That's the freight train that's coming, which is why that capital servicing discussion next year is so important. So, at this point, I think that's the number that Mr. Donaldson has put forward. That is the team's recommendation. He's broken it down for you in terms of what I think, with all due respect to Councillor Nishikawa's comments. He's put it to you in the context of a 3.7 for the operating piece and 3.2 for the reserve piece, so that it's easily discernible as to really what is going where. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and just to address both Councillor Roberts and Councillor Nishikawa. I think we all wish it were lower, a lot lower. But the simple fact is it's incumbent upon council to go through and review and challenge, if we think it's appropriate, the assumptions that are underlying it. To pick a number out of thin air or to tie it to something totally unrelated to the actual forecast cost of providing the services that we provide is artificial. We need to be able to decide whether we can afford to continue providing the same level of service we provided. And if we can't, we have to stand up and say, we're not going to plow roads. I'm being dramatic. We're going to change something to make it cheaper. We could challenge the assumption that it's 3.9, I forget the breakdown, increase year over year. But we'd have to certainly do our homework and figure out where that number came from our treasurer and why we think it overstates the expected cost of living increase, not cost of living, but the increase in the service costs that we want to deliver. And when it comes to reserves, maybe it should be 5%, and maybe that's where we'll wind up after we dig into it. Because if all of the arguments in favor of heavier contribution to reserve are true, that's probably the right thing to do. I don't know if they're true. We haven't looked at them carefully. We haven't pushed back on any of them. But the simple fact is, this isn't the number that is being delivered here is calculable. It's trackable. It's identifiable how we got to it. If there are some assumptions in that number we disagree with, we've got to raise them and back them off or add to them. Similarly, when it comes to looking for next steps and service level increases, which is the big unknown at this point in time, which is on top of the number we're already kicking around, we've got lots of work in play already to support delivering additional or different service levels to the community. This is going to be the gut check. Is this something we can actually afford to do, or isn't it? Can we do it differently? Can we whatever? So, I wish budgeting was something of, see, the power's going out already because we didn't pay the bill. We bought the cheap version of electricity. But my point is simply, it can't be a wishful thing. Go ahead.
Okay, we're going to just pause.
Yeah, we're still, yeah. Sorry, I forget what I was saying. Oh, I don't know. I'm done, I guess.
That was very effective with the lights. Thank you. And I do see Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. Not to put too fine a point on it, I know when we do budgeting, whether it's personal or here, one needs to make some basic assumptions. And I think we challenge staff, and some of us who were here last time challenge staff to go away and come back with an enhancement, a revision, and they did that. And I think this year,
Sorry, Councillor Zavitz, I'm just going to put a pause for one moment. We are okay. Sorry, I just lost screen on both sides. I just wanted to be sure.
Okay.
We're good. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay,
continue.
so in that regard, in terms of basic assumptions made, personally, I am going to put my hand up here and support the 6.9. My assumption is we can't find enough money. We can't raise enough money. We need as much money as we can get. You know, that's walk the talk and talk the walk. Well, we've been doing that for a number of years, and I think it is time. And I'm hearing from constituents out there. You know, people like what we're doing. They like the fact that we're running this as a business. And so when we are doing that, this is no time to pause. This is a time to keep our foot on the gas, keep it going. I'm not suggesting increasing a service level, but maintaining that service level is vital. And if we don't do it this year, I'm not sure when we're going to get the opportunity as these plans come to roost and all these other things that are coming at this township. So I'm in support.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Kent?
Just one question, comment. With regard to all of the master plans, I thought that what everybody was suggesting is that from my perspective, it would be really good if we could do it's the wish list financial plan that just says, we're going to put a new arena in and we're going to do these things that this master plan says, and we're going to put it all together and just show that we need hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm joking, but I have no idea when you totaled up all of the wish list items that these plans are in there, what kind of commitment over what time period. You have to take a guess at it and create a financial forecast for 5 years that shows, I don't think we need a 15-year forecast, and it's going to be wrong, but load it all in there and create a forecast with all the plans on a consolidated basis. And then we can take out item A and we can take them out, and we know they're going to be pared down and changed, but it gives us an overall picture. And then we can combine that with the reserve problem and see how big the operating and the reserve, problem together is, because one without the other is, because this is the picture and this is what the community wants, but we don't have any money for that either.
So I do want to ask
like
our
to see that
CAO
happen.
comment, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And that's exactly the intent of the capital service level study that we're hoping that council will support doing next year.
Next year we'll see.
Yes. And that will be a conversation with the community. So the community will tell you what they think the priorities are in terms of service levels and their thoughts in each of the areas. And some of that feedback you're going to hear potentially through, for example, the fire station location study this year, right? But each of those pieces is the background information for you then to say, okay, the desirable service level in roads is this, the desirable service levels in fire is this, the desirable levels of service as it relates to community facilities is this. Then we cost it out. Then we go through the iterative process of probably scaling back, because I suspect that number will, as you've alluded, will be somewhat atmospheric.
Jarring.
Yes. Thank
When
you.
do you think we'll get that?
As I said, my hope is that, and I'm looking to Mr. Becking and Mr. Donaldson, I know what they're thinking, but my hope is that we'll come back with the terms of reference in the fourth quarter that council will endorse. We'll release that terms of reference through an RFP as soon as the budget is approved.
So you're going to get an RFP done to produce a consolidated forecast?
For the capital service level study. That will be a component of it. An outcome.
So I think for the purposes of today, I just want to summarize that what I understand to be true is that for next year, there's going to be a lot of significant decision points that are going to do, and I'm going to pull on what Councillor Zavitz has been saying. In the last number of years, our council has committed to a lot of fact-based reports and decision-making to build us to the point that we're at today, which is we're not quite there, but we are almost at that last stage, and that's going into next year. So next year, there will be a lot of decision points and a lot more information at our hand that will help form this long-term capital plan. In the interim, what we have before us today is that year-over-year services as they are, a guiding principle of 3.7 I can see that you want to add. Do you want to interrupt me? Okay, I'm gonna allow our, I'm gonna ask our CAO to comment.
For the record, I didn't answer her question as interrupting her either. To your point, the reason for that information, investing in that information, is so that when we have that conversation, we're dealing in facts, because we know that it's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of emotions around some of the decisions you're going to have to make. That's why we've been investing in gathering the facts. That's why we're going to have, or we're suggesting to you that we have this broader conversation in the context of all of those facts.
So before us today is the resolution that I read, which is for next year's budget. The year-over-year operating, guiding an increase in investment into our reserve fund, knowing that we still have other considerations to make. And that will be coming back to us at a future budget meeting in October. So I do see now, Councillor Bosemarth, you have your hand up.
Thank you. And I'm just trying to understand, make sure that I understand the linkage between the capital services master plan study that we want to do and all the other master plans that we've done. And Councillor Kent said, she doesn't understand what each one of our master plans is going to cost us. I don't either. We put them in, but they don't have numbers behind them. Is these service level plan essentially putting a capital plan behind each one of the master plans that we've done? Is that another way to say it? Yes. Thank you.
Our CAO said yes. So that is the vision. Thank you. Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands up at this point. I have read the question. So at this point, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Thank you. That has carried. Thank you very much for a great report, Director Donaldson. And I know that you're staying up because the next portion of your discussion is to ask committee members, similar to how we approached last week's public comment meeting. Are there any items that committee members would like to have brought forward that would be, I guess, called in the a la carte section, or those new initiatives? This is our opportunity as committee members to bring ideas forward for future possible contemplations. So, Councillor Nishikawa.
I'm not, through you, and I'm not sure. It feels weird to bring this up at this location. So I have two roads discussions. And again, some of these property owners are very angry. So I don't know how to bring this up today. But, waiting more than 30 years to get their road repaired is and in fact, many people, I'm saying many as in more than 10 people on the road are paying more than $30,000 a year in taxes, and they're just looking at getting their road fixed. And so I will bring that information to Mr. Becking. It's one in particular was Pine Needle Point, and we will hear lots more from those taxpayers. And we did hear a presentation from one individual last year about it. And I think the response was that maybe in 10 years, we might get to them. That would be, in his experience, more than 40 years of not getting work done on that particular road. So again, and I'll bring forward the other road as well to Mr. Becking.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I have two items. The first one I'll deal with is what I consider to be a simpler request. The community grants allocation that we have. I asked staff to take a serious look at that, and given the ad hoc appearances we have from some constituents asking for relief from the cost of them doing an event, and we have a community grant program that's already tapped out. So consider, do we need to put more into the community grant package. And given that the first drawdown spent the whole allocation, or do we have to really relook at the qualifications or the requirements for the community grant program? And that's what I have to say on that. And so I'd like you to look at that, whether I think it was 20,000 last year, should it be 30? Or should we be re-looking at this whole thing and what we do for community grants? All right. The second one is that we've in 2023, we had a few presentations. We had a lot of public input put forth on short-term rentals, and I attended both of them. And one of the bottom on the people that attended the meeting and of the people that spoke to staff and committee members in attendance is that they need something done in 2024. We need to bring closure to that, or not closure. We need to start. And I know we haven't decided anything. It could be short-term rentals, or it could be tightening up other things. So don't want to talk about what we're going to do in short-term rentals. I just think that what we need to do is ensure that in 2024, we have something in place that is implementable in May of 2024. We've been talking for this item for many years. And so I guess my question is, how do you estimate that? How do you estimate, what if we haven't even decided what we're going to do? But we have to put some sort of seed in the budget. Maybe Mr. Donaldson can have ideas on how, let's say, and I'm going to pull a number randomly out of the air. Let's say we have a $300,000 implementation cost that we need to just to do the implementation startups of short-term rentals. And also, given that we know that if we did anything that would implement more enforcement because of short-term rentals or a licensing fee, that it would possibly be at the cost of people that rent their properties. But I would like to have something in the budget that says we're going to put this money aside so that we can actually possibly, with committee's approval and council approval, do have something implemented in May 2024. And do we take that? Do we have a loan process? Can we transfer, like earmark money in the reserve to say we're going to loan this program or this project $300,000, but once implemented, that program will contribute back to the capital. So I guess that's a question to Mr. Donaldson.
Director Donaldson.
Through you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Roberts. So I would say two things. One, you can always put seed money in the budget for projects that may not be fully identified yet. We could also do that as an in-year item and just draw from reserve during the year and then plan for it once it's fully implemented. Once we know, what the scope of that project is right now, and I would, rely on the input from my colleagues in development services and environmental sustainability to guide me in terms of what the startup costs would be for any program. But I think we need to get to the first step of getting a bylaw in place, and then from that we would kind of have a better sense of what those costs would be.
Just a supplemental for clarification, please. So thank you, Director Donaldson. So what I think I heard is that it is possible to put seed money in if you can come up with a cost, but also it's during the 2024 period, if we decide that, yeah, we're going to do something by May, that we could actually pull it from reserves to help support it. And then if the approval would be for this to be self-funding, we could put it back directly into the capital reserves for the money we've taken out.
So through you, Chair, I'll say yes to that. In terms of the mechanics of it may vary somewhat, but
yes.
But yeah, I mean, you can always put a placeholder in, and until we know what the scope of the project is, we would be guesstimating at best as to what that seed amount would have to be. But once we have a final bylaw and certainly understand the scope of the program, then we could refine that and ensure it's fully funded in the 2025 budget.
Thank you. Then to you, Madam Chair, I would like to ask staff to come back with some ideas during the budget process on how we could do this, if that's acceptable.
I think staff have noted that, and I imagine Director Pink is probably listening to this as well and could probably assist with that as a future discussion. So thank you for bringing those two ideas forward. I appreciate that. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, I suppose on the same concept, and to you, Mark, if I might, do you have a list of, it's not on the agenda here, but do you have a list of the items that you've captured that we have discussed over the last 6, 8, 10 months that you believe are, I guess we'll call them a la carte? Or is this a fresh start? Is this like there is nothing on a list? We're creating the list here and now in terms of a la carte. And if that's the case, I think we probably need some more time to discuss or to ponder. It's a pretty big, either there's no a la carte this year or whatever comes out of these discussions finds its way onto an a la carte list. So I guess, is that a question?
I think I just want to ask, and maybe I can add to the question very quickly, is Appendix 3 of your last report, those potential considerations of an exhaustive list of what we've suggested thus far? Or are there other items that you have heard?
So through your chair, and thank you. So I would say that our starting point would be any resolutions that have been passed by committees, either planning committee or general finance committee or council, where we've been asked to bring things forward as part of consideration for 2024. Earlier today on the Parks and Rec master or implementation plan, that was part of the resolution, right, for consideration. So that's a new one again. So that's kind of the starting point. Then we're taking input from the public. What are the public's desires? And just wanted to give council an opportunity for members of council to bring anything that they're hearing from their constituents in their communities that hasn't already been either passed through resolution or raised by the public directly that they'd like to see considered. We'll take that back, as I made in my opening comments. We'll take that back. We'll assess it. Maybe it's part of a plan that's already in place. Maybe there's other ways we can kind of approach the issues. And then we'll bring back kind of a sense of recommendations, costs, and then you can pick from those based on the impacts to the tax levy, what that looks like for 2024, and we can get a resolution at the October meeting where we get clear direction from committee in terms of, yes, we want to see these things added in addition to 2023 at 2024 prices.
Thank you, Councillor Zavitz.
Supplemental, and thank you through you. So given what you just said, do we formally ask at this point in time for that list? I mean, I guess from what I understand, I can go through all of the meetings for the last 12 months and cull together a list. Would that be something that financial services would bring forward so that we would be able to see the 6, 8, 10, whatever the items are for our consideration?
So just for my clarification again, is that Appendix 3, is that where it says potential considerations on the previous report? Sorry, Councillor Zavitz, just so we're all talking the same document. Is that a comprehensive list of the requests thus far, or are there other ones?
So through you, Chair, and I apologize for not answering your question. So those are the items I was able to identify. So I won't absolutely say it's an exhaustive list. There might be something else in some other set of minutes that I may have missed. But those were the ones that came to mind that are very notable that we've been talking about quite a bit. We saw the transportation master plan last month. We've been having a number of conversations around short-term rentals. We've talked about a number of the other things. We have a compensation study coming up next year. And we know last time we did a compensation study in 2020, there was a bit of a one-time adjustment. We don't know if that's going to occur, but I just want to bring that to light for members of council. And so I think to answer your question, Councillor Zavitz, that comprehensive list you're talking about would be something that we would bring at our first budget meeting in October. So we'll kind of go through the first cut of here's what the status quo looks like. And then we'll also bring that other list that says, okay, so now here are the other things, either through resolution or through request. Here's staff's assessment of it. And we look for direction from committee as to whether or not we want to include that in the final draft going forward.
Thank you. I think the intention was we want to make sure, like historically, we found that we've been in budgets and we're kind of catching up. And this was in the same way we tried to listen to the public up in advance. We were trying to do the same opportunity for committee members. So this is a bit new, this process. And I suspect every budget we go through, it will get a little bit easier because we are kind of expecting it at that point. So Mayor Kelly?
I just wanted to compliment Director Donaldson through you for this report and the appendices. I found them very helpful because they are, I would call it a building block to an end result. They're incremental. They develop incrementally. If there's an issue you want to challenge, change your mind on, or change the service level, you flag it and we can talk about it later. But I thought this was a great start.
Thank you. Okay, committee, are there any other additions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Director Donaldson, and just echoing the same words. We really appreciate your leadership in this area and look forward to your report end of October. Thank you. He said that last week of October. Are you okay? Excuse me.
I was just wondering if we have a date for that October meeting.
Oh, thank you.
We've all got stuff going on and, you know, adding meetings needs to happen earlier in the cycle. Please.
Thank you. Director Donaldson.
Sorry, Mike.
So I think the question right now is when will that first meeting happen? And so perhaps I think the suggestion would be maybe our clerk offline can set that schedule. I think we had agreed that there would be a kind of guiding principle schedule to try and get the budget completed before year end. But now that we know that we have these guidelines, I think that might be the appropriate way for us to move forward. But thank you. Councillor Boseworth?
I thought I heard that they'd be starting around October 30th.
Yes,
Is that correct?
I think.
I'm looking for dates and times.
No,
Yes.
fair enough. It's just that it is a month and a half away. So,
Well, a month and a half away
Yeah.
for some of us that have multiple projects is
fair enough.
not a lot of runway.
yeah, fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you. I just looked in my agenda. I think there was a note sent out a few weeks ago identifying dates, if I'm wrong, April 30th or October 30th, October 31st, November 1st, November 2nd, 3rd, and the final one on November the 27th. I don't know how that, I hope I'm not looking at the wrong year. I could be looking at the wrong year.
Oh, yeah,
All right, so I'm in the wrong year. Yeah.
No, so that is fantastic. And I think what we'll do, just in the interest of today's meeting, we'll ask our clerk just to follow up with all of us so we can get them in our schedule and make sure that we live up to the commitment. So thank you. Thanks, Councillor Roberts. I'm not sure. Okay, so moving on. We don't have a lot more, but I did want to, I didn't want to gloss over because we don't have an item under item number 10. We do have a new member of our team. He's with us here today. Mr. James Cox. For those of us sitting in the room, James is our new Economic Development Officer, correct? And comes to us, and I don't want to get this incorrect, so I'm going to make sure I read this correctly off my notes. But has actually a long history in economic development. He has, let me just tell me if I'm getting this incorrect, James, at all. He was most recently ECDev officer with the West Perry Sound Muskoka Regional Economic Development Office, and he's also had experience in the towns of Goderich and Leamington. So he's coming to us as the township with a lot of experience, even some experience here in this area. And so has an understanding of some of the conditions and some of the things that we're faced with. I think it's also interesting and good to note that he lives in the community. He lives here in Port Carling and is raising his young family here. And so I feel like we're in really great hands for those of us in the last few weeks who've had a chance to work with James on a couple of initiatives. He's hitting the ground, quite literally running, has been out and about and meeting the business community. So, we really look forward to working with you, and we welcome you to the township. So everybody now has a chance to meet James, and I would suggest everybody go and say hi if you haven't already. So, welcome. Moving on, is there any unfinished business? I don't see any. So that I think I can move on. Oh, I thought that was under new business. Is that right? 1, 2, 3. Okay. I have 3 items under new business, including the one we talked about earlier today. So that was just unfinished business. That's right. There's nothing. Okay. So under the new business district, I'm looking at you, Mayor Kelly. So I'll start with you, Mayor Kelly, Councillor Nishikawa, Councillor Burry, and then Councillor Edwards.
Just through you, and thank you for the question. There was no meeting last cycle because of the conflict with the AMO conference. The only thing I would point out is that the first real meeting of the now fully stocked Affordable and Attainable Housing Task Force is on September the 28th. And I, as chair of that group, am hoping for the best. I hope we can find ways to stop studying and start building and get some people into affordable and attainable housing.
Thank you. So just then I'll look quickly to our district councilors. Is there nothing else to add then? Because there wasn't meetings. Councillor Nishikawa.
Well, if anything, though, I would suggest that if council is interested, that to really go on the website and understand the we're talking budget as well, and understanding how we're spending the money. And I think that's a bigger picture of the impacts on Muskoka Lakes, I will say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Burry.
The budget cycle has started with the district, and we will see the first copy of the tome, which I take electronically because I can't see a tree being cut down. It's so big. But that's October 6th is the first iteration we'll see of what this year's gouge will be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards. No, nothing. Okay. That's okay. If they...
No, actually, I'm a little muddled right now, but I think, is it Monday at 10:30? The Watershed Council are giving a report down at the in Gravenhurst. You can check the website on that, and that's a bit for that, but we didn't have a meeting either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to now move on to the next item, which is community events update. As I noted at the beginning, we do have the Windermere Terry Fox Run this upcoming Sunday. So that's a great community event. We're always well attended. It sounds like there's one in Bala. So this is a chance for those folks in Bala, if you'd like to provide some further details. Yeah, that's fine. This is your opportunity. That's what.
Well, no, I just wanted to say, so Bala it's not a new thing for Bala. It's been like 30 years that we've had this. And again, support indie. I'm just going to say support indie. So we do have Arnie. We have a young fellow that he did his first run still in mom's womb. And I think this is his 18th or 19th. He's either 18 or 19 year, and he's continually done this run. So please support Bala as well.
So just out of curiosity, is there details as to when and where this run starts for Bala, or would you?
Sorry, Bala, yeah, in Bala at our arena.
Okay, Bala Arena.
8 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Mayor Kelly.
One quick one, the ash drives for Friends of Muskoka Watershed resume this Saturday morning, 9:30 at the Rosewarren Transfer Station. I believe it's 9:30 to 1 o'clock. So gather your ash and bring it to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Edwards.
Through you, Chair, to His Worship, on this subject. This is the one. There's another one in late October. Is that the last? That's the last. Okay, because all right, so I have two, but I'm gonna have trouble getting out there this weekend. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Kelly.
No, this is actually the first. This Saturday is the first one of the season. They run through March or April of next year. Then the next one I think is October 21, and then there will be one in November as well.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. Just on the Windermere run, there is a silent auction. It's online. It's the Windermere Terry Fox run thing. They have two Muskoka chairs that have been donated. There also is a Rogers, I think it's an iPhone. It's about $1,700 or $1,800 worth. If anybody needs a phone, you can put your silent auction items in. And that your bids on that. There's other things as well. It's well supported. The Lions will be doing a burgers, and I think they're even doing veggie burgers this year. And that, and there will be music as well. So everyone is welcome. Unfortunately, because I've got COVID, and so does Linda, we won't be there this year. But please support it. It's a real community event. If anybody hasn't seen it, they should go. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Bosworth?
Just that's Sunday, is it, Councillor Edwards?
Okay, there's one.
Yeah, I thought it was on there. It's Sunday, the 17th. The sign up is 8 o'clock and the run starts at 9 o'clock. And like I say, it goes from there. 5K is out to the fire station and back. 10K is out to Bracken Road and back. And it's at the community center and that. And you'll see a lot of people there. There's usually over 100 and that. Thank you.
Okay. It seems that Sunday is a really popular day for these events. There is one other one, and that is the Beaumaris Golf Tournament. The firefighters from Milford Bay Station present an annual golf tournament that they do at the Beaumaris Yacht Club. And so that is also happening on Sunday between 7 and 1 p.m. So just as an FYI for those in that area. Are there any other community events? No, seeing none, we'll move on to item C. And that is to bring us back to earlier today when we had a delegation come forward with a request for some incremental snowplow. And we all had a chance to ask some questions. I think at this point, it's probably helpful to hear from staff as to what they may think as a next step or as a possible next step on this particular request.
I think the best answer, Madam Chair, would be to have the matter referred to staff for a report. And I'll go out and answer questions and pull together the necessary background information so that you have it in order to make a decision. This is frankly, it is the tip of a very large wedge. And so hence the reason for my hesitancy to give you any definitive answers, because this is a pervasive issue throughout Muskoka. And the decisions that you make will have significant implications much beyond just looking after a couple of kilometers of road. You know, to put this in context, what this gentleman has asked you is to provide winter maintenance on a roadway. If you look at your budget documents for this year, you'll see that our budget for winter maintenance is about $1 million. And we look after 356 kilometers. So one divided by the number, the other will tell you that we spend about $2,840 per kilometer. So that's the simple part of it. It's the broader implications that I think you need to be concerned about.
Okay, thank you. I do see a few hands up. I think I saw Councillor McIntyre. Did you have your hand up? No? Okay, I saw Councillor Roberts and Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Director, Director Becking. I did a quick look at the Transportation Master Plan. And as everyone here is aware, it is one of the choices that council can make to take over roads that are municipal property and not maintained. I'm saying it wasn't on the list, and I'm wondering if this particular case, we should just work our process, work our transportation plan. And because I agree with you, I know 3 roads. If we were to elect to snowplow that one, I have 3 roads that I'd like to add to the list. And so I think we have to really cautiously proceed with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you. I'm ready to vote now. We've seen proposals. This municipality has seen this same request from different another property owner, only one other property owner twice that I remember this request coming over the last 20 years. And you know, one of the other things that didn't really come up, it's not a great road at all. So we're really starting from a total reconstruction. Like it's not going to be just that. If we were just to say, you know, 2,800 per kilometer kind of thing, it's going to be much more and much greater. And really it's interesting because there are property owners that live off the grid down there that actually like their privacy. There's a whole different, you know, extension, I guess, of residents down there that choose to live the way that they live. And so I don't know that we'll hear from them particularly, but I'm ready to vote on this because I cannot support and I don't ever see me supporting the plowing of this particular road when there's more roads out there with more year-round residents on them that I would have to look at first. And so this would not be one of the roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Kent, then Councillor Zavitz.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, we tried this with an extension of Focal years ago as a project. It failed sadly. Every time it rained, they wanted it graded and everything else like that. I would support Councilor Nishikawa. I would not even send it to staff at this point, just say no. And that because everybody, if you choose to live permanently on a seasonal road, then you pick up the tab. Other taxpayers should not be picking it up. It's their choice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent, then Councillor Zavitz.
Simple question. I would assume that we must have a policy that says we plow roads that have this many seasonal residents versus, I mean, some way of making a decision between road A and road B, which ones we plow and which ones we don't. I mean, I appreciate the comment, no, we shouldn't do this road, but what makes this road any different from some of the other roads? You must have a decision-making issue, and I don't know what that is.
Director Becking.
Madam Chair, to the best of my knowledge, no such policy exists.
Thank you.
Every decision that has been made historically, as I understand it, has been made around this table. Without, frankly, all of the necessary background information in my case. It's been purely on a financial.
So is it safe to say, Director Becking, that as we look to next year and we're doing these types of conversations with the service level review, this is the type of thing that we will be one of a few that we will be contemplating?
I would say yes.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
For you, I guess, you know, I appreciate the Director of Public Works embracing the notion that that he would come back, I guess, in a month with some sort of observation on this particular road. And I guess I'm just wondering if you were to do that, are there, I don't know, 8, 10, a dozen roads like this that are, perhaps to my friend's question earlier, are there a number of roads like this that are almost there as opposed to just generally roads around the township. I mean, if we were to support, you know, the top 10, if you will, to your earlier point, with some intelligence around the decision as opposed to an emotional one. How does that feel to you? Are you aware of a number of roads that may just about qualify for us assuming?
Director Pecking.
Madam Chair, I can say to committee that this is a pervasive issue throughout the township. This is Camp Jackson Road is one of many roads that fall into this category. I have not done a detailed analysis to say that this road is close and that one is not. So I don't believe that I would be in a position to be able to answer his question.
Thank you. I see our CAO would like to comment.
So Mr. Becking may want to expand on this, but I believe one of the recommendations of the Transportation Master Plan was the potential for adding some 35 kilometers of road to the overall road system that, you know, the road system that we've got locked in our, you know, commitment to plow and maintain, et cetera.
Madam Chair, the CAO is correct. I would caution, however, that 35 kilometers is not an exhaustive number.
Right. Councillor Kent.
I personally think that, to be fair to somebody who came forward and made a presentation, and as I understand, came forward 5 years ago as well, we need to have some sort of decision-making criteria that's standard so that we can say, you meet it, you don't meet it, I'm really sorry, but right now we don't have the money in the budget to do roads that are more than X, and otherwise we're completely going at this in a random fashion. So I would say that the follow-up, I think, ought to be more of a review of how we make our decision rather than which roads fall into which criteria.
Okay, Director Becking.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And to the councillor's point, one of the strong recommendations from the TMP was that we need to get our policy house in order, which is exactly spot on with what Councillor Kent is speaking to. The public has a right to understand the rules of the game. You have an obligation, however, to understand the implications of the decision that you're making in each and every case.
So I think at this point with this particular one, there's two paths forward. One, we could ask staff to come back to us with a future report. I did hear from a few members that we don't even think that's necessary at this point, that might not be a good use of staff's time, that we would rather wait for the future considerations. So am I allowed to do a straw poll or just get a sense? How do I, because if we don't, can I just do a straw poll? That's I'm trying. Oh, okay, so I kind of got a sense. Is there a general agreement then? Straw poll? Do we just want to just say no to this particular application? Quick show of hands here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It seems like that's just the general consensus. So I feel like what in this particular case, and our clerk will follow up with the gentleman who did present today and just let him know. But certainly for all of us sitting around this table, we know that this is going to be one of many, many things that we're having to look at and contemplate through the leadership and guidance of our staff going into next year. This is a great example of making better and more thoughtful and more fact-based decisions in the stewardship of the township. Yeah, it's so I will suggest at this point, Mr. Becking, you do not need to do a report, and I would simply ask our clerk if you could follow up on our behalf. That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. I don't see anything else at this point. I just want to make sure I check. Okay, that's correct. Excellent. Moved by Councillor Zavik, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 11:35 a.m. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held at Wednesday, October 11th, 2023 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from Council Chambers, Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Excellent, that's carried. Thanks very much. We get a little bit extra time for lunch. This is a nice change.
We should send her a leave. Council will be starting.